Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is transitions. Should be an interesting conversation because we're perpetually moving through transitions, some noticed, some not. And I think it'll be an interesting thing to explore together. So before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today we're talking about transitions, and I think we can run the gamut with this conversation, because what is life if it isn't transitions, right? Transitions from one physical place to another, from one phase of life to another, from different phases of relationship to another. So we've got transitions happening all the time. And I wonder if we can distinguish between change and transitions. I'm wondering if I think that we often mark transitions from one context to another. And I guess what I want to talk about is the process of that transition. I guess it's probably interchangeable with the word change, but we often mark transitions when they're dramatic or we recognize them. I think that the thing that's bringing this to mind or to fore for me is that I'm readying myself to move from a place that I've lived for 23 years, I think, a long time. The longest I've ever lived anywhere. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you joining us today. We're talking about transitions. So this is up for me because I'm starting to take care of things, or weed through things in this preparation for transition. And I'm recognizing that this preparation for transition is something that is very healing. I think that it is part of the transition where we create this extended container for ourselves to be able to make a transition. And oftentimes transitions can be sudden and unexpected, but when we engage in those transitions actively and consciously, there's a very different character to it. And it brings to mind, I'm guessing this is Sue. Good morning. I think Sue is saying, hi, everybody. I try to enjoy transitions when they're happening, a gap in my routine. At some point, it'll be over and my new life will be full force. I hear that. I hear that. Oftentimes, we find ourselves sort of enduring circumstances and wanting them to be over, like I'll get to the other side of this and then I'll be in my new life. And I guess what I'm present to is the releasing of the old in order to receive the new, that kind of making room. I've been going through and shredding papers. And so I actually found stuff from 1995 and before, actually, but like receipts and things from 1995. And so we're talking 30 years ago. And the transition, what I'm noticing is kind of the letting go of identities, the letting go of different aspects of myself, my history, my belief about who I am. And it's interesting to see the things that I'm choosing at this moment to keep. So I'm talking about letting go, but I just found a whole pile of a whole progression of resumes that I had for myself. And I elected not to get rid of those. And it's interesting because it's evidence of a changing story, literally, right? A resume is a story that we create of ourselves. And so reading through those resumes and seeing the transition and the evolution and the expression, it was very, very, very interesting. And I'm choosing to keep them at this moment because I find it just fascinating to see the changing story. And so we don't just pop into a new life, usually, unless there's some kind of unanticipated upheaval. We don't typically just get catapulted into a new life, which actually brings me to this other thing I was thinking about this morning. I woke up with this very, very cool notion that I want to explore more fully with you. And that notion is of reality flickering in and out of existence. And I know that there is some quantum physics theory around that. Good morning, Brandy. Welcome. So good to have you joining us here. We're talking about transitions this morning. So we're talking about extended transitions that allow us to acclimate and orient ourselves to a change or a transition, like moving from one place to another, um, moving homes, changing relationships, all kinds of things like that. But I'm talking right now about waking up this morning with this notion of the universe flickering in and out of existence. And as I said, there's some quantum physics that addresses that notion. And what was coming to mind was continuity and discontinuity. So if indeed, and this is sort of a mental exercise, but if indeed the universe flickers in and out of existence, then what occurred to me is that it doesn't need to be the same when it does that flickering, that it actually can be, perhaps it could be flickering into radically different manifestations, and that this idea of continuity is a concept. Sue says, what do we do when we're triggered and have resistance to a transition? Oh boy. Okay, so this is a really good question. I operate from the premise that if it's coming up, it's coming up to heal. And so when we encounter resistance, it's an opportunity. Because I can tell you that I have been coming up with all kinds of emotions around moving. And the resistance, we can look at, well, what's going on there? And for me, when I was noticing resistance around moving or packing or shredding papers or any of that, there was fear. And good morning, Dido. Hi, it's so good to be here with you or have you here with us also. Dido says, I love that. If it's coming up, it's coming up to heal us. I agree. Like we often perceive what we consider negative emotions, challenging emotions, to be problematic rather than an opportunity. To see, we often see that as a problem, like something that we need to fix rather than an invitation for deeper inquiry. So when there's resistance to transition, the question, or resistance to anything, the question is, what's going on? What's that about? Where's that coming from? What am I saying to myself around this that is cultivating that resistance? And what I was noticing is there was fear, some anxiety about the unknown. And so then it gives me an opportunity to look more deeply to say, okay, well, what's going on with that? What's the fear? And is that real? What am I creating? Where is that coming from? And in these transitions, I want to get back to this notion of transition. I think when we have the opportunity to be present to the transitions, all kinds of emotions come up. I'm thinking now of this wonderful thought leader, brilliant teacher, movement maker, named Carol Sanford. And Carol had, I believe it was Lou Gehrig's disease. And so that was a very dramatic deterioration of her body while her mind was still sharp. And she, being what she called herself a contrarian, maybe a positive contrarian, but she elected to actively and consciously embrace the transition to dying. So she was engaged in active dying. And when we're talking about the resistance, like if you're facing, and in a certain respect, we're all dying, right? We're all living and we're all dying. So what was interesting is that she involved other people in this process and created a sort of ceremonial approach to her passing, which is one of the greatest transitions we could even conceive of, right? So yes, Dido, it's that Carol Sanford. She's written a number of books. She was just an amazing thinker and evolutionary. Sue says, allow the feelings. There may be no problem, but a little anxiety. Is the fear real? Yes. So thank you for that, Sue. Um, and I'm sure that in her process, Carol was experiencing all different kinds of things in her encounter, in her active engagement with her transition process, her process of dying. And it was interesting because at one point she was actively engaged in the process of dying, and then partway through she decided to live, which was really interesting. She still had her condition and she still had every intention of choosing when to die, but she chose to live. And then at one point, she just said, okay, I'm ready, and stopped eating and drinking, and she passed at her discretion in a conscious way, and was able to engage others in that transition so that it became something that was not a tragedy. It was a part of life. And there's the there's the celebration and the loss, both the celebration of her life and the loss of her also. And I think this gets back to the notion of holding paradox, getting all emotional here, because I see this on so many levels, not just with life and death. It doesn't have to be so dramatic. It can be moving. It can be having a child leave the family home. There's celebration and there's loss, or there's mourning, grieving. And I'm noticing that in the transition from, so much emotion, from this place that's been my home for so long. And it's interesting. It's so interesting that when we are facing these kinds of transitions, that we gain a new and deeper appreciation, or maybe not always, but in this case, I am experiencing a new and greater appreciation for this place, and allowing myself to be more connected to a meta view, I guess, of the experience that's been here, and of the portion of life. So we have these markers in life where they're cultural markers. Good morning, Robin. So good to have you here with us this morning. We have markers, for instance, for christenings or sweet 16 or bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs or weddings or funerals or birthdays. There are all these celebrations that are marking transitions, many of which are manufactured, right? But we can create these ceremonies and these rich, deep experiences of our transitions, which are occurring all the time, right? But there's some transitions that have a degree of import to them that is greater than others. You know, like maybe transitioning from one job to another. Maybe you've had a job, you've made great connections, you have a great affiliations there, and you've outgrown it, so you're happy to leave it, but it's mixed feelings. There's all these transitions, right, that we embody with different emotions: resistance, fear, sadness, excitement, the anticipation of new opportunities. And all of these things are happening all at once. And so it requires us to be able to hold paradox, to not make those emotions wrong, to not shunt them away. Robin says, moments of our journey that are a milestone of life, imprinted memories. Exactly. It's so interesting. It's so interesting to revisit, like going through these 30 years worth of papers. You know, I'm seeing names that I don't even remember, like references to relationships that I don't have a recollection of, and others that I do. And seeing identities that no longer fit, seeing parts of ourselves that we've outgrown. Sue says, I say to myself, I'm looking forward to what is next. I often sign texts with or emails with looking forward. And when we think about that, I'm inclined to want to balance that with really being present to what is. Um, that that in this moment we look forward, we look back, but it's all here. It's all here right now. And so when we look at life as process, rather than looking at ourselves as something like a fixed entity that is moving through circumstance, uh, but instead we are the process, we are the becoming, we are the transition that is ongoing. I think it's a very interesting perspective, and this notion of the continuity. I'm not I'm not sure that continuity is real, or if we just keep creating things to be constant. Like that there are these transitions, they're not always smooth, right? Like maybe things do flicker in and out of existence. And what does that do for transition? If we blink and all of a sudden it's a different experience, and we blink again and it's a different experience. It's our consciousness that's creating that continuity. At least I think it's our consciousness that's creating that threading everything together and creating these transitions. So Robin says, live each day as if it were your last, so you have no regrets from your past. That's beautiful, Robin. Yeah. I think when we live into the moment, I guess we can only perceive transitions if we're trying to expand time, right? And if we're relying on continuity so that we can see the change that's happening. I I I just am exploring this new idea of being able to kind of pop into different dimensions of reality, and the idea of transition kind of juxtaposes to that. Again, paradox, continuity, discontinuity, transition, change. Is anything actually fixed? We know that the one constant is change, right? But what if we get to orchestrate that change? So more questions than answers. My mind is just kind of firing off with all these ideas that I want to explore together more deeply. But we have more time to do that, ostensibly, right? So anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for hanging in with this notion of transitions and jumping around with me today. Um, This is the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin. I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And it's always a pleasure and a privilege to share these ideas together and explore what it is to be human. So until next time.